everyone, I'm here with my favorite governor, Doug Ducey, who puts up with my nerding and also has done some pretty cool work on occupational licensing reform and other work. So I wanted to take a few moments for you to get to know him better. I'm Shoshana Weissmann, and I'm at the R Street Institute where I manage our digital media and work on licensing reform. So Governor, how are you?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me, Shoshana.
Of course. This is my mini show, I guess. But one of my favorite things is when we talk about your governing philosophy. I really enjoy hearing how you get from point A to B, because when we first met, I was like, oh my gosh, this guy nominated Clint Bolick to the Supreme Court. He's doing all this reg reform. He must be like a huge dork for unenumerated rights. But you're not. So tell me, why licensing reform?
Well, my background is in the business world as an entrepreneur. Cold Stone Creamery, the ice cream company, was my business, and we began franchising that out of Arizona. And we opened up 1,440 stores in all 50 states. So I was able to see how different regulatory regimes treated us depending on the state. And when I ran for office, I'm just such a big believer in the power of our free market and what it can create. So I wanted to focus on that while making sure that the government stayed limited, but I wanted to see unlimited opportunity for our citizens. So the philosophy has always been about opportunity for all of our citizens, and I want to see people be able to climb the economic ladder.
Well, on a related note, why have you never brought me ice cream?
The one flaw is that it melts. If it traveled better, I'd be bringing it every time.
Yeah, we should meet in less warm places. So with licensing reform, you've done a lot of really cool regulatory reforms, a lot of licensing reforms too, in particular because there's all kinds of regulations that get to businesses, whether it's lemonade stands or even FDA classification for what you can call ice cream and stuff like that. But what got you thinking about occupational licensing reform in particular?
Well, Arizona is a growing state, and we're proud of that. We don't think there's any better leading indicator of a place where people want to live than that they pack up their U-Haul truck and move to the state. We think it's an indication of our economic attractiveness and quality of life. And we wanted people that came to our state to be able to work. And we had these bullies on our boards and commissions that were basically saying, no, you're not able to work here. We've got a couple letters that would just turn your stomach in terms of what they put, licensed citizens coming from other states. So it began with military spouses because it was the right way to do it politically. Everyone wants to support our military and military spouses, and they often move every 2 years. So we began with that, and then after people were able to see the success around the recognition of military spouses, we said we want to have this universal recognition for all of our citizens. Somebody doesn't lose their skills simply because they cross a state line. So now when people move to Arizona, there's universal recognition of their occupational license when they come to our state.
So how do you get it done? Because for everyone who works in licensing reform, we know how hard it can be to get by the boards, by various interests, and even just people who mean well, but the means ends don't really fit great. So how are you able to get such a big reform through?
Well, I'm fortunate because we have a freedom-loving legislature that actually wants to expand freedom for our citizens. But even with that, you have to lay the groundwork. It's got to be the right idea. I do want to encourage people, if it seems like it's too big of a lift to go to universal recognition, to definitely start with military spouses. That's something that's very acceptable politically, and then people can understand the policy. And we should be free in our country to move from state to state and to go to work and earn a living. And that was the call that we had, and we had excellent leadership inside our legislature, and we were able to pass it in this last session.
That's a really big deal, though, because we work at the R Street Institute. We've worked on licensing reform, and lots of other groups here at ALEC have done the same. And ALEC itself has a bunch of different pieces of model legislation. One thing I'm curious about, they have one model piece that basically institutes regular review of licenses to make sure that the standards kind of match. Do you think that putting in that systemic kind of regular review is something that's helpful? And when it's in place, how do you make sure that the review really happens? Because you know how Sunset sunsets and sunrises kind of just go off sometimes.
Well, I do think that idea of a regular review is a good idea. I love the idea around sunsets, around these laws and these boards and commissions. So often, or I would say nearly always, there's an unintended consequence that no one sees coming, even with the best of intentions. And a sunset gives you the opportunity to either eliminate the board and commission altogether or to make the necessary adjustments so you can improve it. And we've always tried to have the litmus test that, of course, we want to protect public health and public safety. But if it goes beyond that, if it's somebody that's just protecting a special interest or feathering their own nest or playing some of these crony games, that we can eliminate it and get rid of it as quickly as we can.
Since you've passed the reform, have you heard stories of people being able to move, or have people come up to you and said how the law has helped them?
Yes, I've had that happen. I actually have a couple letters that I definitely want you to read that will show what the bureaucrats were doing to citizens that had skills, had paid for their education, and just really wanted to go to work. And I actually had an instance where I was in the airport in Washington, D.C., and I had a gentleman come up to me and say that he was a professional accountant, but he was certain that the law didn't apply to his CPA certification, and that he spent half his time in Arizona. He'd like to spend more time and actually bring his practice there. Sure enough, it does apply to CPAs, so he's able to do that. He's thrilled, and now he's going to bring his practice to the state of Arizona.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And I hope it's something that all other states copy. It does give us a competitive advantage, but one thing that's great about ALEC is they do have this model legislation, and when something's a good idea, governors really don't think so much in partisan terms as to how they can lead their state as chief executives, and this is something that every other governor across the country is free to reapply in their state.
Governor Tom Wolf just did it too, and I know that a lot of other states have already asked me, hey, this looks really cool, how do we get this done? So I know you've been a big leader there, but one issue on which Arizona and all states actually other than Texas fall behind on, what are you doing for bringing three-toed sloths to Arizona?
Well, I pledged that I would be governor for all the people, and I want to see everyone be able to climb the economic ladder. I will say if they would move a little faster, I think that they'd have better opportunity in the economy.
That's fair. I'm just saying I think the weather would work. Just consider it. Thank you so much for making the time to talk to me.
Thanks, Shoshana.
Thanks.